Sir Anthony Hopkins, you work with Sir Anthony. What was that experience?
As most of the greats are, extremely humble, extremely playful. And you know what I love about Anthony Hopkins is his true love of younger actors. He loves to communicate with them, to share his experiences. And he's one of the great mimics of our time. And he would literally mimic Ralph Richardson talking to Laurence Olivier talking to John Gielgud. And then he would throw in a little Richard Burton in this. And unbelievable.
Make sure you start the new year at your best and grow your business with ShipStation. Use promo code PATH at ShipStation.com to sign up for your free 60-day trial. ShipStation.com, promo code PATH. Manage your budget better. Start your new year right with Rocket Money. Stop throwing away your money. Cancel unwanted subscriptions and easily track your expenses with rocketmoney.com/path. Hey, it's Scott Savlov on the Path here, and with me, Sebastián Roche, the actor, the international actor. And I'm jealous right out of the gate, Sebastián. You make me jealous because, well, right out of the gate, you know, you do due diligence on people and you speak so many languages, and I struggle with English. And I'm thinking to myself, how does this guy have time to learn all these languages? And you're just so easy about it. And then you've actually worked it into your craft. And so as an actor, you've seen him currently he's in Taylor Sheridan's 1923. He plays a villainous teacher. I don't know how, my teachers in school were mean.
A priest. Yeah.
Mine weren't just villainous. This is to me, it's kind of like an evil character. You're evil.
Yes. Very, very.
And so we'll get to that, but his resume of characters and acting that you've done is mesmerizing. It's like, where do you start? So for me, I want to dig in right away you have a Scottish mother, a French father. So right away, my initial question as a culinary enthusiast, how does that style work? Scottish and French doesn't seem like it would correlate.
Well, luckily, my mum came to France and discovered the joys of French culinary cooking, because she's an unbelievable cook. No, I was raised, my mum is Scottish, but she met my dad in France, and I was raised in France. But we were always raised in a bilingual sort of universe, because my dad was actually born in Vienna and raised in England. So he was bilingual himself. He was trilingual by the age of 7 when he came back to France. My mum is also Scottish, but was raised all over the world as well. I both had grandparents who were working for their respective governments. So our house was always a sort of hotbed of multilingual activity. We always communicated with each other in French and English. And, at school in France, I went to an international school, so I took Spanish and I took Italian. And I think I had just had an ear for languages. And I knew very early that I wanted to be an actor. So I had an affinity to try and perfect those languages and try and, in terms of accent. And so that's why it came to me so easily. I think it's like when you live in a very musical family, you are more adept at playing an instrument, and I think it was the same with me for languages. And as I had a fascination for film, theater, and accents of all kinds, it's now helped me in my career enormously, because if you look at my resume, you will see different characters. You'll see like Heinrich and Jules and Pietro and Pedro and, different characters. And it really has helped me through my career, and American characters too. I played this Montana sheriff on a TV show. So yeah, it's, this upbringing has not only enriched me as a person because I love to communicate with different cultures. I'm fascinated with traveling, but it's also enriched my career. Yeah, definitely. To this
Now,
day.
you part of your upbringing, you lived on a boat and traveled.
Yeah. That's always that.
Again,
Yeah.
these are great, visualizations. Here's a guy, he speaks multiple languages. His whole family does. Tell me how that came about and how long were you guys traveling afloat?
Yeah, I mean, we were, my father was a boat aficionado, sailing boat. We're not really into motors at all. So he very early was into sailing. He'd read all these novels about people, sailing around the world. This was the 70s, the mid 70s. And my dad was corporate and never saw us. And one day he basically said, okay, we're selling the house and I'm buying a sailing boat and we're going around the world. I was, around 12 at the time. And we pretty much, for a period of 6 years, sailed, from France to the Mediterranean, pretty much the whole Mediterranean, the west coast of Africa, to then crossing the Atlantic to the Caribbean and South America. So, and this was, mind you, the late 70s, 77 to like 83. So this was a time when, there was a sort of boom in people having that same idea. But I mean, there weren't that many boats, though, at the time. Now, of course, if you go travel the Caribbean, there are tons of sailboats at anchorages and there are sailing channels on YouTube. But this was a really sort of adventurous decision on my dad's part because, it was, you couldn't, nowadays you have predict wind, when there's going to be a storm. We just had the radio, and it was very much not the beginnings, but it was, a period where it was still quite an adventure to travel that way. And do you
have fond memories of that?
I have unbelievable, really fond memories. I think only fond memories. It's difficult living in an enclosed space with your whole family because there's not much privacy. But, the memories were extraordinary. And, the fact that we got to travel and see so many cultures and meet so many extraordinary people and have extraordinary experiences that you would never have as a child if you were growing up in the same place. Nothing against that, but, it molded the man that I am today. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is fascinating, I think, to people because it's so far from what anyone
the norm
would the norm. Yeah. I was raised in
school, figure out what you want to do, take a job.
Yeah.
In what your family created was an adventure.
Yeah, very much so.
And for a whole family to, the whole family go on an adventure for multiple years.
Yes.
Is to me, again, jealousy. I'm like, wow, what,
well, it was, not always, because it's not always, you're not always in the lap of luxury, within a year we were kind of broke. It was not, basking on the deck and, having people bring you a mimosa.
You worked the boat.
Yeah, we worked the boat. And most people who don't know, I mean, sailing is a very arduous craft. It's not easy. It's wonderful. You get to experience, things that no one else will ever experience, but it's a very hard lifestyle,
Now, do you and your wife ever go out on a sailboat now or no?
No, well, I go out on sailboats. I in Marina del Rey has these races that they do, and I participate in them but my wife is not really into that at all, which is fine. I totally understand. It can be quite a daunting thing, getting on a sailboat. People think, oh yeah, they see these beautiful images of sailboats in the Caribbean, but there's all, they don't understand, when there's a lot of wind, when there's a lot of chop, I'm meaning waves, and it's challenging. It's very challenging.
It's really challenging.
It's very challenging. It's beautiful.
I had to operate a jib in a catamaran race.
Oh yeah.
It's hard. And when people say, "Oh, isn't that fun?" It's like,
it's fun. It's fun. I mean,
but it's tiring.
Yeah, racing is tiring. It's a totally different form of sailing. Sailing for fun is totally different because you just put up the jib, you have the mainsail up, and you just sail. And if you're sailing between islands in the Caribbean or in it's fine. When you're doing a big passage, it's a different story.
If you have a small business with not that many employees, but looking for a way to be more efficient and save monies wherever you can, then your solution is the same one I use, ShipStation. Great e-commerce solutions with savings up to 86% off UPS and UPS rates. ShipStation helps you get what you need to send and faster. Keep your customers and clients happy and fulfill more orders than ever, all while cutting your shipping costs and managing it all from a single dashboard. For me, sending products to my events are essential. Saving valuable costs saves my small company much needed dollars. I use ShipStation to handle all my shipping needs. Be like 130,000 other companies and switch to ShipStation now. Make the new year your best year and grow your business with ShipStation. Use promo code PATH today at ShipStation.com to sign up for your free 60-day trial. That's ShipStation.com, promo code PATH. Your schooling, let me get these things. You attended the French National Academy. Now, correct?
Yes, I mean, I went to the, in terms of a drama, I did. I went to what they call the conservatory, the National Conservatory of Dramatic Arts in France, which is called the Conservatoire. I couldn't afford to go to, I applied for RADA and actually was called back. And then I was like, I can't afford it. So, and at the same time took there are 3 tries where you try out for the Conservatoire, which is like the most prestigious school in France, and got into the Conservatoire. And it's free, because everything, graduate school is free in France, any university is free. And they gave you a scholarship as well if you entered, because they only took 30 people out of quite a few thousand per year. So I chose that path, and it was a really interesting experience, working in that school. You learn.
What motivated you? What was the turn that you said, "Hey, I want to do this. This is why I want to go to this university"?
Oh, this university. I mean, what motivated me is to go and further my studies and try because I was really only into theater at the time, even though I was fascinated by film and television and great actors. I would go, when I'd go to England, I'd go to the Royal Shakespeare Company, the National Theatre, and I would see my heroes on stage. It was really theater that motivated me, and I really wanted to perfect my instrument. And by doing so, it was said that, if you went to the right school, that you would get there. And I did learn a lot of stuff at drama school. I learned about what to do, and I learned a lot about what not to do.
Right.
But it does teach you, to use your instrument in such a way. And by working on text and working with teachers, you gain a certain experience. And while I was working at the Conservatoire, I remember doing a play, and, they allowed you to do a play at night, and, and I did, a few TV jobs. And so that's really was the basis of my schooling, in acting. And before that,
I was going to say, then you made the transition to move to New York.
Yes. Yeah. So I started working in France.
Again, what, a lot of people would have been content.
Yeah.
With the path doing theater and film in France and staying there and kind of gaining the notoriety in your, at that time, multiple languages, but native tongue because of the upbringing. What brought you to going to New York?
Yeah, it might have been easier for me to stay in France, but I truly had this indelible love for the English language and everything English, British. I would, cherish my time going over to Britain and with my grandparents, my British grandparents. There was something that really attracted me to that culture. And I felt way more comfortable. I'd actually performed, before I went to the Conservatoire, I'd performed Hamlet at the Edinburgh Festival in English, of course. And so it felt like the right thing to do. And I was going to move to London, but I think I broke up with my girlfriend at the time. I was like, screw it, I'm going to New York to see what it's like, and was dazzled by the energy there and thought to myself, I'm going to stay there. Got my green card really quickly because it was, at the time it was not that difficult. I went there just to travel and then went back to France and then applied to go back and never looked back. And as soon as I got there, I started working. Yeah.
The transition of working, and the consistent theme in an interview with you is a lot of actors have downtime, a lot of time when they're not acting. That's not you. You, I do have right downtime, out of the gate, right out of the gate. I mean, you were working, you hear the stories. Well, I waited tables for 2 years and then finally got this break. Right out of the gate, you're working. It seems to me, based on tracing your background, it sounds like there's more conflict for you. Do I want to stay in theater or do I want to do film/television? Was that kind of a thought?
I don't know. Well, I really enjoyed my time in theater in New York. I mean, I did actually work. I did wait tables in New York. I went through that. It's a rite of passage. It's kind of a rite of passage, and I'm actually glad I did it because it's tough. It's New York. You got to get into the New York rhythm. Hey, how you doing? You got to. It was a necessary rite of passage for me. I did it for a year or so, and then got a job. And I'd previously done a job in America. I did Last of the Mohicans with Michael Mann. That's what kind of also set everything in motion. I thought to myself, this is where I need to be. The response from people is a great response. It's much more enthusiastic than the response I had in France. This is where I need to be. My instinct told me to come there. And yes, I did focus on theater. My first theater job was doing Salome, Oscar Wilde's play Salome with Al Pacino. Wow. And I actually auditioned for the play to play John the Baptist, Yochanan, in it, and found myself basically, on the billboard with Al Pacino, Sebastián Roche. I found the poster again. And I thought to myself, oh my God, that was my first professional theatrical experience in New York with Al Pacino, one of my all-time heroes. So from that moment on, I started working with Julie Taymor. I started establishing myself in the New York theater scene. And of course, then, got an agent, a manager, and started doing television, the prerequisite Law and Order. I did that way back in the day. I've done a few helpings of Law and Order since then. Yeah, and that's how basically my career started. I really enjoyed doing theater, and then, sort of mixed both theater, film, and TV. Yeah, and at the start in the early 90s.
One of my friends, you'll appreciate this because you're probably with him on Law and Order.
Yeah,
is the comedic actor Anthony Anderson.
Oh yes, yeah. I never worked with him, but yeah.
Oh, okay. So Anthony, we were in Arizona and we're playing golf, and we had to go back to this culinary event. And he said, Scott, it's the pedal on the right. Just step on it. You're driving too slow. And I said, but this is an area where you're going to get pulled over. And he said, hey, I was on Law and Order. I got this.
It's true, yeah.
There, I just want to give you my one Law and Order.
Yeah. I never worked with him.
I remember looking at him like laughing, like really.
Oh, it probably would have happened. Yeah, it's funny because in America, being an actor, a screen actor, gives you a sort of cachet of royalty. I've been stopped and recognized and got off because I was recognized. It's happened.
That's what I'm talking about. I love that. Now, you also put in a sustained period of episodic television on a soap opera. For me, growing up, the biggest, General Hospital.
Yeah,
But
that
you
was
did it
actually
in multiple
really
languages, right? Didn't you do?
I think I did use it. I asked them if I could do it. Yeah, I remember speaking. Yeah, what language? I spoke Spanish at one point, and French probably, and Italian, and then Russian at one point, because I was kind of this sort of James Bond gone bad. It was an interesting story actually about that when they asked me to come on the show, because I was a New York actor, I was a serious theater, film, TV actor, and I was going through a difficult time in my life and my career, and I was asked to do a huge amount of episodes on General Hospital, and I was like, no, I'm a serious actor. I do not do soaps. And eventually relented. They really wanted me for this part. I said yes. And it's actually one of the best decisions I made in my career. It's really interesting. People would say, oh, really? You're going on a soap, aren't you? And I arrived there. They treated me like I was the second coming of Laurence Olivier, and they gave me free rein. Everyone was unbelievably generous towards me, and they gave me the most incredible storyline as this character called James Craig, which was based on Daniel Craig, of course. I was kind of this bad boy who took everyone hostage in the hotel, and so it was absolutely. It was total jubilation as an actor. I had all the lines. I was taking everyone hostage, and I was the dude who was taking everyone hostage. They were very, very generous to me. And that started, and some people were like, everyone's going to hate you. And actually, they loved the character, which led to me signing a contract with them. And so I went on to do that and left after, I think, a year and a half or 2 years, because I wanted to pursue other things. But it really completely changed my career. It made me move to LA. I sold my house in New York, which was the best thing I could have done. Bought a house here, and then was working in LA, and in the best possible conditions, really, because they were so kind to me, really, truly. And then, that really, everything sort of worked. It's as if the energy was right for me, was ripe for me to move to LA. Everything worked out. I found this house that I love, found a job, left my East Coast worries, and came here, and it really was the best decision in terms of my career as well.
For me personally, I mean, continue. I grew up in the New York area, so when people ask me, well, do you miss it when you're in San Diego? I'm like, just repeat your question and ask it again.
Yeah. And I do miss certain things. I do miss going to the theater because it's something I truly adore.
Right. The theater, the food.
Yeah, the food and the ability to go anywhere. But when I was in New York, actually, did I go? Yeah, I did go to the theater more. But now that I'm in LA, I'm actually traveling more. I go, and actually you push yourself to go see things, and I travel way more around the world too. When you're in New York, you stay in that sort of microcosm of.
It's a New York way of life. It's very New York centric.
It's super centric, and you just stay there, and you don't go. I would barely go to the Catskills.
There are. That's why I was asking about France, and I didn't know the vibe. The New York centric actors, the Ed Burns, and these are folks that live for the New York. Matthew Modine. These are really great actors who do everything. However, they're New York centric.
Yeah,
everything.
And there are lots, who do a lot of theater there, which I totally understand. I would love to do more theater in New York. I really would. It's such a challenge. It's so much work. It takes so much bravery to be in a play. People don't realize how difficult.
It's got to be terrifying.
It's terrifying, and it's an unbelievable amount of work and precision and focus. And it's something I really love. I did a play. I fulfilled my dream of being on the West End in London, and did Tartuffe, this classical Molière play, there in 2018, and it was unbelievable amount of work, and it takes a lot of sacrifice. You living, breathing theater for 3 months, you kind of don't have a life, because it's, I had a quite a momentous part in that play. So yeah, I tip my hat off to people who do that a lot. I would love to do more of it, though, because it does make you a sort of, I don't know if it does make you a better actor. It sort of
I would think so, because it's
instrument.
Precision, right? It's
it hones your
instrument,
precision. your instincts. It's a different, I love the intimacy sometimes of filmmaking, when you're on a close-up and you can do very little, and you're doing an interior, and you're communicating, you're bouncing off your partner, and you're doing something so minute and intricate and precise and spur of the moment. I love that too as well. I was just working with this wonderful actor, Jamie McShane, on 1923. And we did this scene where, I don't know, we bounced off each other so well. And the silences in the scene, I love when the silences people need to know that silences are important. That's what I love about Taylor Sheridan's writing and the way everyone works, is they let the actors breathe the scene. It's not some guy going, could you go faster, please? No, it's not that. It's the way he writes is extraordinary. You feel the breath. There is sort of natural evolution of language between the actors, and it makes for great TV. And actually, it makes for great art. As Taylor says, this is not a TV series, it's 8 1-hour movies. And that's how I feel. It's exactly how we feel as actors on that show. I was working with Jamie, and Jamie and I were bouncing off, and afterwards we were like, this was so much fun, man. And he's a great craftsman, and I consider myself a craftsman as well. And it's two artists working together. It's just wonderful. There's nothing like it.
Let's come back to again.
Yeah, sorry, I'm diverging.
That, no. that to me is the essence of not only this show and the interview with you.
Yeah.
But it's your inspiration, right? Your motivation. If you're turned on as an actor, or you're feeling it, not only is there a better performance, you yourself get that high, that adrenaline, because you're enjoying what you're doing. It's not laborious. It's not. I can't.
And
wait
what's
to
beautiful
be
is
done.
the crew. Yeah, I love to see the crew too. You can see this real. Crews are really wonderful people. They are part of your family. You can see them. You can see the camera operator enjoying what's going on, and when a crew member congratulates you after, it's actually some of the greatest. I take it with such great honor, because these guys see everything, and it's they don't have to, but it's we are collaborators, and I always actually collaborate with the camera operators and the director, of course, but the camera operators are there. They're the ones who are seeing you. They're the ones who are the focus puller. And I always ask them, what size lens they have, because and they're so willing to communicate, and that's what makes it such a beautiful dance. That's why I really, really have grown to love filmmaking. I mean, filmmaking, acting, and.
Well, let me, with your body of work, and we'll come back. No. I want to come back to 1923.
Yeah.
But with your body of work, it's almost too tempting. Covering movie after movie after movie can be almost laborious, because you've done so much great work. To me, the fascinating thing is you've also worked with some of the, most diverse names.
Yeah.
Both from directors, writers, and fellow actors. Yeah. So I'm going to play a little game with you that I like, because I do this with friends who are actors, because what I like getting into, and this is the thought process, is you're seeing a fellow actor, when you're filming, with full vulnerability. If they're not vulnerable to you as a fellow actor when you're doing something together, then probably does not work for the audience, because there's that layer of where it's not this kind of warmth where you feel like these characters are real, right?
Yeah.
And so for you, with the body of work, the ebb and flow of body of work, just going to throw some names. It's like when I talk to musicians.
Yeah.
And so-and-so is a jazz musician, I'll say, give me something musically in rock and roll. Give me something in classical music.
Yeah.
Give me something
in jazz. Which I'm passionate about, actually. I love music. Music is really important.
And to me, that's, again, musicians want to be actors or professional athletes. Athletes want to be musicians. And it's always this, but it's
well, there is a sort of
yourself.
interpollination. Yeah, there is a sort of interpollination because we are inspired by pieces of music. You know, sometimes you're inspired by a piece of music that can help you as an actor. You know, that happens to me very often.
It's a craft, right?
Yeah.
And that craft requires practice, and it requires you immersing yourself into it.
Yeah.
The same holds true in athletics, in sports.
Yeah.
So, you know, again, I'm going to throw some names at you. Tell me what your experience was like, or your takeaway from working with them, with something that may have affected your career.
Yeah.
Right. So early on, Al Pacino, what was your takeaway working with Al?
Well, that was one of he made me a better actor. There's absolutely no denying it. What I really, really appreciated, you know, when you're rehearsing, the process of rehearsal is a really interesting one. And when you're rehearsing with such a, as we call in French, a monstre sacré, a sacred monster, it's actually a positive thing because he's such a huge actor and such an extraordinary, I wouldn't say, I mean, he's an extraordinary technician because he's one of the greatest actors that ever lived. But what I saw in his process of rehearsal really changed me enormously. There was such freedom. And he was completely uninhibited. If he needed to roll on the floor while saying his lines, he would do it. And his approach to the text, I think he's one of these actors who has the most extraordinary relationship with objects, with tactile. He has an extraordinary tactile approach to his. If you look at his body of work, it embodies, you know, the way he approaches the text, but also how he approaches props, the way he touches things is extraordinary. And he is such a hard worker, you know. He had pages of dialogue as Herod, you know, in which there was so much beautiful modulation and inventiveness, and he's fearless. You know, the way he approached it, he was like, I'm going to do it like, upstate New York, old Jewish lady, Herod. So he made himself up and he said, that's how I'm going to approach it. And in a way, it was kind of a genius approach. You know, he wanted to show Herod's, he was dripping with jewelry, but his approach, his complete respect for the text and for the way he sort of worked the space was amazing. And then, you know, we did I remember doing the night, you know, a run through before the premiere, and he did it, and I was like, what's he doing? He's not doing anything. And he was still great, but he wasn't doing anything. He was basically keeping his reserves in. And then the night of the premiere of the opening, everything came out, and it was the most extraordinary spectacle. And I was like, wow, this is how you do it. Yeah. Right? And then I remember auditioning for something, and I got a part, and it's because I approached the text the same way he did. And I knew I'd become a better actor just by looking at him and the experience of being, you know, in his aura. I'll be honest.
If you're like me and you're constantly getting billed for things you don't remember signing up for, start your new year more efficiently by signing up for Rocket Money. I did. Rocket Money, formerly known as Truebill, is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills, all in one place. Cool, right? Rocket Money makes canceling subscriptions as easy as a click of a button. Simply find the subscription you don't want and press cancel, and Rocket Money will cancel it for you. No more long hold times with your customer service. Stop throwing away your money. cancel unwanted subscriptions, and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/path. That's rocketmoney.com/path. Another actor who is known for immersing themselves, Daniel Day-Lewis. You mentioned
Yes.
Last of the Mohicans. Now, to me, no other movie was I feeling exhausted. Like, this guy ran so much in that movie. He had to be in phenomenal shape.
Yeah.
But as an actor,
every morning he would go, and he trained for quite a few months, of course, as you could see physically, because he was not. And, every morning would go running in the woods, and he learned, also how to load a musket while running, So he learned
not
all
an easy
these,
thing.
no, not an easy thing. So he learned all these crafts. There's another man who's truly passionate about his craft and who I admire to such an extent. I mean, truly a real artist and a really kind person, very considerate of others, very humble man. Some people consider some people difficult because they're so method, but no, you have to appreciate the artistry. And even though I ended up on the cutting room floor of that film, I was there for 6 or 7 weeks in Asheville, North Carolina, and also learned a lot from him. And actually what I loved also, I remember it started raining, and they told everyone, go under the covers, and the extras were left outside, and he said, no, we don't do this. Get the extras in where all the actors are. We're not these kind of people. We don't let the extras stay out in the rain. And I was like, yeah, this guy's a
you gotta love guys like that.
He's a proper good dude,
Another
and
person,
phenomenal actor.
Sir Anthony Hopkins. You work with Sir Anthony.
Yes.
What was that experience?
Again, there's someone, as most of the greats are, extremely humble, extremely playful. And what I love about Anthony Hopkins is his true love of younger actors. He loves to communicate with them, to share his experiences. And he's one of the great mimics of our time. And, he's one of my idols, complete idols. And he worked with my idols before him, Laurence Olivier, Ralph Richardson, John Gielgud. And he would, and of course, I love to listen to him. He would come with his tray at lunchtime and sit with us, young actors. And I was like, this is, another extraordinary artist who wants to share his craft and who truly loves what he does. He's like a child. Same thing. Same as Al, this sort of absolutely no inhibition at rehearsing in whatever way he wanted. And he would start, sharing with us, conversations. He would literally mimic Ralph Richardson talking to Laurence Olivier, talking to John Gielgud, and then he would throw in a little Richard Burton in this, and unbelievable. And I actually, I felt a real kinship to him. I think he felt a little paternal towards me, and I felt, like he was like my sort of screen dad. And we were doing this strange way of working. We were doing a motion capture film, called Beowulf, with Robert Zemeckis, also one of the great directors of our time.
Bob Zemeckis, great.
Great
and director.
Yeah, I mean, this cast was amazing. Brendan Gleeson was there, John Malkovich. So many more on that film. Robin Wright, Angelina Jolie, Crispin Glover. I mean, there was so many. Ray Winston was playing Beowulf. So there was this unbelievable array of brilliant actors. But I have to admit that I truly fell in love with Tony. I mean, he was, and of course, you go up to him and say, Sir Anthony, he's like, no, call me Tony.
Yeah.
And, he's just that guy who is a beautiful artist. He happens to be famous and one of the greatest actors that ever lived. But at the end of the day, he's there to do a job, and he's very gregarious and loving and generous. And truly another extraordinary experience. So lucky to have worked with him.
Now you had a different type of role, but working with Steven Spielberg. So Spielberg had to be an interesting person too.
Oh my God, yes. Another one, it was another motion capture film in which I didn't have such a big role, but you know what? Working with probably one of the greatest directors of all time, again, down to earth, knows exactly what he wants, incredibly kind, incredibly generous. These people are models, and they are in a certain place for a reason. And, I've admired his craft, his artistry for so long. I mean, it was, again, an absolute pleasure. And he would listen, if we had, he loves to hear proposals from actors. So very generous again. It's so wonderful to work with the greatest because they are the greatest. It's a cliche, but a truly, I mean,
well, I'm of the mindset.
A true master at his craft and incredibly down to earth. And actually, Daniel Craig was in that too,
Oh,
very,
really?
very, very kind, down to earth person as well. Andy Serkis. So, I mean, yeah, at one point I was feeling a bit sick and Andy every day was like, "Oh, you all right, mate? You all right?" So, yeah, great artists are usually great people. And it's just wonderful
for you, your evolution in doing characters, not just acting, is as we've heard you do, your New York accent is spot on. It would people if you stayed in that. I mean, growing up there, my parents were from Brooklyn, so it's like not very hard. I can hear somebody. When they put on and they try to do the New York accent, I'm like, nah. Yours is actually really kind of spot on. So it's kind of cool. The different roles that you've taken on. I mean, in the different niches, you're in Vampire Diaries, and I've gotten friendly with several of the actors that you work with in there, and they're all kind of the same age bracket, and they all kind of right. They lived in the same kind of communities, and in Atlanta where you would shoot, and all these different things. But for you to then delve into a series like that, was that as inspiring for you, or was that just something, a time of your life you took the role on and you said, I'm going to immerse myself in this character, make the best I can?
Yeah, for me, it's always about the work. You can value a series more than another one, in terms of artistry, but I don't really see it that way. If I go in to do my job, I want to do my job as best I can. And my character was actually incredibly well written. He was one of these extraordinary, in a way, if you can compare it, he was kind of a Shakespearean character. I'm not saying it was Shakespeare, but the character was larger than life. We're talking about 1,000-year-old vampire. So for me, I took in all that information. He was a Viking vampire, and I thought to myself, how that man has lived many lifetimes. That man is probably a master at everything that he does, that he's put his mind to. He speaks many languages. I didn't use it enough, unfortunately, but, I used whatever qualities I had to put it into this extraordinary character. He was so larger than life, and I truly enjoyed playing that role enormously, because there was, he was such a complex character, and it necessitated so much energy to play him. I literally would be, my diaphragm was so, afterwards I would literally, it's as if I'd worked out after playing that part, because he was generated by hatred and revenge. But like all people who are that way, it comes from enormous pain. And there was a history of that character. And so it was always interesting for me to delve into this very, very rich character. And I approach it the same way, there are different levels of writing maybe, but, I knew some of the writers on the show, and they always wrote beautifully for my character. And I think because he was such a complex and interesting character.
I love the the voice and it's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, and he was just so
a
focused.
unique character, and
Yeah.
and that brings us in this conversation to working in a niche with some other great actors. I'm throwing names at you. You got Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren.
I mean,
you're in Taylor Sheridan's 1923. You talked about Taylor earlier and his writing capability. There's a reason Yellowstone, it came out when COVID hit. It was the right place, right time. But if he didn't write well, just be one of those other shows.
It may be right place, right time, but I mean the writing, the acting,
impeccable, right?
Also
incredible writer.
Yeah, and the ability to cast the right people, because great directing is great casting. And I'd been a fan of Taylor Sheridan. I saw Sicario and I was like, who wrote this? This is one of the most, in its genre, is one of the most perfectly written movies I've ever seen. And then I was like, oh, Taylor Sheridan, who's this kid or this new guy? And then I watched Hell and High Water and I was like, oh my God, this guy's brilliant. And then I watched Wind River that he directed. And I was like, my God, this guy's amazing. And then I started watching Yellowstone, watched every single season, watched 1883. And I was like, I need to be part of this universe. I want to work with him. And I talk to every actor that I know. They all want to work with Taylor Sheridan because he knows how to write for actors, having been an actor himself. And he has the capacity to, his casting is, he has an unbelievable gift for casting. When I look at Yellowstone, Cole Hauser as Rip and Kelly Riley as Beth, and the way he cast those, and Kevin Costner, genius. I mean, everything is unbelievable casting. I mean, he casts greats because everyone wants to work with him because of the writing. The writing is always key for an actor.
And as you said earlier, every episode is kind of like its own film. So it's kind of written a little differently than some other type of episodic scripts.
Especially 1923. Yeah. Especially 1923.
23.
When 1923 has a scope, when I started reading the scripts, I auditioned for another role and didn't get it. And then I was told, we feel that this would be better for you. And I auditioned for it and it took a long time and I got it. And I was so, I've never been so emotional. I mean, I was very emotional when I learned that I got it because I knew that I was embarking on an adventure that was going to be incredibly rich for me. And I think the way he attracted Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren because if you'd read the scripts, I read all of them, and I thought to myself, my God, first of all, I've never read scripts that fast and wanted to learn to read the next episode that fast because it was so engrossing. It was like I was reading Hemingway and at the same time, I don't know, Jack London, Nick Adams stories. It was like I was reading this extraordinary novel. And the writing for the actors was just so perfect. The relationship between Jacob and Cara Dutton, Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren, and the younger characters and the African story and the story that I take part in, the residential schools and how important and difficult it is for people to watch it. I think how important the story is. I was so struck by the beautiful richness of this story, and I think I willed myself onto this show. I was going to be in this show, and the character came to me. It sort of took over me, and as soon as I auditioned for it, I knew that it was the right character for me. And the process of filmmaking was the same. I think every actor on this show is working very hard to do the best job they can. And we all met, ahead of time and became very, very friendly with each other. And I hadn't met Harrison till and I have no scenes with Harrison and Helen, but I would go to set to watch them work because, I mean, Harrison Ford, I mean, come on, this man. I went to see Raiders of the Lost Ark when I was living in the Caribbean, at the Carib Cinema in the British Virgin Islands, and I was like, yes, that's why I want to be an actor. And I've idolized him since, in Witness, Mosquito Coast, all the extraordinary, and Jack Ryan, and he can do that so well. And Helen Mirren, of course, I'd seen Excalibur, and loved her in Excalibur, of course, and then went on to see what an extraordinary artist she is.
Oh, amazing! So it was a no-brainer. At this stage of her career, it just seems like there's nothing restraining her. It's not like age impacts Helen Mirren at all.
But look at that. Two of the greatest artists of our generation signed up to be in this universe because that universe is so great with character building. The character building is extraordinary. All the characters, even the young ones, who are doing such a great job. And it really, that everyone is trying to do the best that they can, because you're on something that is
special,
beautifully special. Truly, I feel that I'm in something special. We, all of us, and I'm working with these character actors who've worked forever. The Tim DeKays, James Badgedale, all these people. We're like, man, we're pinching ourselves, man. We're all, we're here on set, man, and they're all like, we're all watching the masters at work and having amazing fun, creating our characters. It's just wonderful. That's why you become an actor. You in these pinch me moments. It makes the hard moments of waiting for a job, all the worthwhile. It really does.
For you, someone who has worked steadily, and then you get inspired for this role, does it ever get to a point where now all of a sudden you think to yourself, hey, I want to come up with, I've had a pretty rich storytelling life myself.
Yeah.
I want to do a story about a family growing, that sails around the world. And because you're gaining so many storytellers, all the names that I just rattled off and said, what do you think of? I mean, some names that I left off, Heath Ledger.
Yes, my God. Yeah.
You mentioned
At the
Julie
beginning of his career.
I mean, these are unbelievable, what I always think, storytellers. Yeah. They're just not actors. They're not just singers. They're storytellers.
Yeah.
You're a storyteller. Yeah. But does it ever inspire you to look back and say, I actually have had that? For me, if I delved into it and people start asking me questions about I always say, I'm the real life Forrest Gump with a slightly higher IQ, maybe. But it's about storytelling. That's what I do. But when I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, man, maybe he's inspired to write his own kind of theme of a really cool story because you lived it, but you have such richness of different people to pull from that are storytellers.
Yeah, I think it's kind of cool. It's interesting that you say that. I do write. I mean, I've written I wrote a script way back in the day with a director who's doing well nowadays, and we won the audience award at Slam Dance, the first year of the Slam Dance. And then I've continued writing. I wrote a script that, there's been a little interest on, and I'm, in the process of writing some other stuff. But I also thought, what if I wrote the story of our lives, on the boat, and then afterwards, because I've had, some pretty interesting experiences, with that, with the boat life, with acting, with moving to a different country and becoming if I can say, a player in that country, a piece of the puzzle in the great world of acting, which is not easy because, I go from a French background, then I was doing well there and then decided to start from scratch. And then, also I have great experiences that I had when I decided to do a documentary on this crazy guy called the Machine Gun Preacher. So I went to Africa and into like war-torn Sudan. So I have all these experiences that I had, and then, moving to LA and the experiences in being on a soap and it's unconventional, my path, because, you know, a lot of people be like, no, only do movies and don't do TV. And you know, I'm proof that you can, if you believe in the work and you continue doing believing in the work that you do and working hard at it in the best possible way, you can continue. Longevity is something that's the most important in our business. You know, you can be a huge star at 20 and forgotten at 25. And I know I was up for longevity. You know, this is what gives me pleasure. This is how I need my creativity to express itself. It's acting, and I want to continue doing it. So yeah, I've thought about writing that book very much, especially lately. You know, now that I've finished that script, and you know, because I was writing then I stopped writing and I started writing again. I was like, oh, I can do this. I'm pretty good at this. So yeah, I think one day there will be a book about our life and how, you know, you see your father a certain way as a teenager, and now reflecting back, he's passed away, and you know, what a hero he was to do, what courage it took for him to take all his sons out of school. And yeah,
you know, as you're framing this for, if it's a film, you want to start it off with, I was on this podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. I was on this podcast, and someone mentioned that I should.
And then I started delving into my life.
Yes. Well, who knows?
You know, just saying.
Who knows? Yeah.
Thank you so much for visiting and sharing some of your story, because I imagine there are a lot of other side stories that come from all of the films, theater, writings, and productions that you've been involved with.
And hobbies that I love, you know, because I love rock climbing and traveling the world to rock climb and mountaineering. And anyway, we'll talk about that another time. Sorry, I cut you off.
I was going to say that in itself that's a different YouTube show, but but you can currently see Sebastian on Netflix in Cabinet of Curiosities.
Another great experience, yeah.
Right, and we didn't even cover that, which is
no.
You know, another topic, because again, the director of that,
and Tim Blake Nelson, great extraordinary artist, great
film. You know, kind of context of what Netflix really gives you the opportunity to do. Yeah. And of course, you could see Sebastian in 1923, Taylor Sheridan's prequel to Yellowstone, and
we come back February 5th.
There you go. You will enjoy the work, the writing, and I think, as you've heard, Sebastian's putting his own spin on things using different characters that he's come across in his life to pull from. So that's the nature of acting, and also collaborating. I don't care what industry you're in, you're pulling from other people that you admire, and that's what keeps it paying forward. Sebastián Roche, thanks so much for coming on The Path Here.
Thank you so much. Such a pleasure.
You can catch some teasers for this at Scott Savlov and at Scott Savlov The Path Here on Instagram. And Sebastian has his sites to visit, whether it's Twitter or Instagram, and find out what he's working on, what he's going on in his life. I'm going to specifically look for rock climbing so I can get a gain on that side of you. And thank you so much for coming on The Path Here.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure. Really wonderful conversation. Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to this week's show. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Feel free to write us on thepathhere.com to have one of your questions featured on a future episode. You can follow me on Instagram at Scott Savlov. If you want to send us a tweet or follow us on Instagram, it's at The Path Here Podcast. Hey, I'm Scott Savlov, and you've been listening to The Path Here.